Welcome friends to Farm Fresh Designs 59. Today's video has got a lot of different mushroom projects done in different decorating styles. So let's get started. So here is another one of my favorite molds made by Zuri out of different mushrooms. And I didn't realize until I was getting ready to edit this video that this particular mold is out of stock. However, on the Micah Daughters website, they have a lot of newer mushroom molds that are equally as beautiful. Now, I have already made up this mold with hot glue, and I just finished doing a video where I did a tutorial using hot glue. What I like about using hot glue and resin are those two mediums you can go ahead and make up and put off to the side. And now the hot glue molds, they tend to be a little bit more flexible. And so this was just something that I had made up. Now there are 4 larger mushrooms on this particular mold, and I'm painting those with Rust-Oleum Serenity Blue. There's actually 4 mushrooms up at the top that I'm using that color. And then down there where my thumb is, there are some tiny little mushrooms that I also paint with Serenity Blue. And I like this color, especially in the fall. It goes really well with browns and softer oranges. Now, the next mushrooms that I paint, I'm using Dixie Belle French Linen. Now, the mushrooms that I'm painting now are rather small, and so I'm using a little detail brush. And it's a little difficult to paint those, but a lot of times when I'm painting and I mess up or my brush touches something by accident, I have to just keep in the back of my mind that it's just paint and I can go back and fix it. Now the next part of the mold is down on the bottom right side, and I'm using Waverly Truffle, and I think the little creature that I'm painting, I think it's one of those slugs. You know, you see them in the summertime and they get up on your porch or your sidewalk and they kind of leave that trail of shiny stuff. So I'm using the brown on that. Now on the other side, it's actually a little snail, and I'm painting it with Dixie Belle Stormy Seas, which is a really pretty color. It's more of a darker teal blue. Now I have already painted the entire mold with Rust-Oleum Chiffon Cream, but remember it's clear when you first start, so one coat is usually not enough. So what I'm doing now is just being really careful. And those parts that were chiffon cream, I'm going back and painting those again. And it's also a good way to do little touch-ups in case the paint that I used that had color in it does touch that part. So this part is a little bit difficult. But I like that this particular mold, it has all different kind of mushrooms mixed in, because in just a few minutes, I'm going to be using the IOD mold. Now, I do want to give a shout out to Ellen J. Goods. She was my inspiration for doing a mushroom video. She has something that she had a workshop on with the IOD mold, and that was kind of where I got my inspiration. And I'm just going in and touching up. And then down at the bottom, the little grass is Waverly Moss Green. Now, that seems like a color that might not blend as well. But what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be putting, I believe it's the Voodoo Gel Stain on it. And so I go ahead and put the Voodoo Gel Stain on it and kind of darken up, and it especially pulls out the details. And I'm putting it on with Tite Bond glue onto this little round or little oval piece. But because it's a bigger piece, I just use these little clamps to kind of hold it on, especially up at the top. And this is what the finished product looks like. Now this is actually one of those metal pieces that's got 3 different sections in it. but I'm using it today as like a planter for some faux greenery. But it's just some really, really pretty colors that you can use at fall. And it could also, you could kind of throw in a little bit of orange with it. Now, this is just a little can that I actually did a pretty good while ago before I actually started YouTube. And this is that same mold. And all of it was painted with Rust-Oleum chiffon cream. And I had already glued this mold on, and it's actually been sitting around for just a few weeks, or maybe longer than that. And I just didn't decide what I wanted to do. But, you know, on molds sometimes you don't always have to use color. And so I just go back and I use the Voodoo Gel Stain. And it's just one of those really neutral projects that you can have, but you can add a lot of detail to. And that's what it looks like. And I just put, you know, a little piece of greenery in there. And it's a little metal can. And if I wanted to put a real plant in it, I probably would kind of poke some holes down at the bottom so the water could run through. Now my next project, I'm actually making like a little tray for the kitchen. And this is the IOD Mallows pages. And this is just a really large sheet. And it's got all different kind of mushrooms on it. And this is just a scrap piece of wood that I had out in the garage. And I painted it with Rust-Oleum buttercream. And I made sure to put, you know, some sealer on it before I started putting this transfer on. Now this is a really large transfer. And it took me a pretty good while to get it on. And for some reason, it wouldn't transfer really well. And I don't know if it was, maybe I've had it too long or maybe it got hot or something, but it was really hard. I about didn't think I was going to get it on there. Or it may just be because of, you know, whatever the wood was made out of, but I had sealed it. So I really wasn't understanding why it didn't go on really well. But so it just takes me a while. And remember, when you use a transfer, after you get it all on, then you're going to want to take that plastic sheet that you're pulling up and kind of, they call it burnishing, where you kind of rub it back over that transfer just to make sure that, you know, if any of the little pieces might be sticking up. And when I'm doing a large transfer like this, instead of having one big sheet of plastic that I'm pulling off, a lot of times I'll just kind of trim it off as I go. And these are actually some old handles from an old dresser. And I just attached those on the front. And I didn't paint them. They were actually that color. And I'm going to put extra sealer on it so it can be used. And these are just some little wooden beads that I put on the bottom just to raise it up a little bit. So if you're liking this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and be part of our family. Now, my next mushroom project is using the IOD mold, and it's called Toadstool. Now, on this one, I'm actually using air dry clay. And if you'll notice over to the left, there's just going to be a small brass little planter that I spray painted with Rust-Oleum flat black. And then I used some of the fern leaves from the IOD Dewdrop Pond mold. And I forgot to film that, so I apologize for that. And I painted those with Waverly Moss Green. And I'm just actually using some of the mushrooms. I don't use all of them, because this little brass planter is only about maybe 4.5 inches tall. And so some of the bigger mushrooms on this particular mushroom mold will not fit at all. So I'm just using the smaller pieces. And with air dry clay, you just kind of put some in your hand and roll it around and get it warm. Push it into that mold. And then that's actually an old Lowe's gift card that I saved. And I just kind of scrape back over the back of it just to make sure it's flat. And not everybody does that. It's just, you know, your own preference. And so I'm just getting all those made up. And I actually go ahead and make a few extra ones because I didn't know how I wanted to place them on this planter. Now, the reason that I'm using air dry clay on this particular project is because I'm planning on layering some of the mushrooms on top of each other, or especially the stems. And because I haven't decided on the particular placement, I wanted to make sure that I would be able to kind of push some of the stems together. So you'll see later on that some of the stems kind of layer on top of each other. So when I put them on with Titebond glue, I will press that top stem into the bottom stem that I'm layering it on top of, and it just makes it really easy. Now, this particular mushroom that has the little pointy tops to it, you'll notice that right now the top of that mushroom is kind of sticking up a little bit, and I don't want it to, because with it also being made out of air dry clay, it would probably break off real easy. Now what I'm using is Rust-Oleum chiffon cream to go ahead and paint the different stems of the mushrooms. And this is a pretty tedious process because I'm trying not to get any paint on those green leaves. And I know I could go back and paint it, but because that green just barely shows up, if I had moved them over to the side, it would have been a little bit easier. But it was going to be even more difficult to use a tiny, tiny little brush to go back and like do touch-ups on the green. But this took me a pretty good while. And so, are you somebody that likes mushrooms? I am a girl of the 70s. And if you're my age or just a little bit younger, you're going to know what I'm talking about. But back in the 70s and early 80s, there were a lot of mushroom things, and it was in the avocado green and orange and gold. Now, the mushrooms that are not pointy, if that's a good word for it, I'm painting those with Dixie Belle Red Barn, or Barn Red, I'm sorry. Because that's actually the color that Lynn on L&J Goods used on these top mushrooms. And I think it's really pretty. And I've noticed other YouTube creators using this mold and putting the Barn Red on some of the mushrooms, because that particular mushrooms are the ones that are a little bit more rounded off. You can see the little polka dots, if that's a word for it, raised up on that mold. So I've got all those painted red, and then I'm using, I believe, French linen, Dixie Belle French linen, to paint the mushrooms that are more pointy. And then I'm just taking a small little brush, and I'm just dipping it in the chiffon, no, not chiffon cream, the linen white. And I'm not really going by the dots on the mushrooms. I'm just kind of making the polka dots all over it. And I think it just kind of adds a little bit of whimsy to it as well. And I do not put polka dots on the pointy mushrooms. But I like the final result. I think it's really pretty. Okay, once I get finished with all the painting, now I'm using Dixie Belle Voodoo Gel Stain. And I'm using that because I want to bring out a lot of the details, and just because I want to kind of tone down that barn red just a little bit. And this is what's kind of interesting. As I was putting that Voodoo Gel Stain on it, some of it got on that black, and I liked it. So I'm going to show you what I did in just a minute. But I go ahead and put Voodoo Gel Stain all over that mold, and then I wipe it back. And I like that the gel stain sort of tones down that red just a little bit, and it still shows up really well. And then I'm just wiping it back. And remember, when you use Voodoo Gel Stain, if you take off too much, just go back and do it again. Sometimes it's more trial and error than anything. Now, because I kind of messed up and got the voodoo gel stain on the little planter, then I realized I liked it because it made it look, I guess, sort of rusty. And I liked that effect. So then I just went back and I put voodoo gel stain all over it after that. I did not go back on top of the mushrooms. But I just like the way it looked. And it's just very subtle because I wiped most of it off. But I left just enough to make it look just a little rusty. And I guess you could probably put a live plant in this, but you would need to like punch some little holes in the bottom. And this is the final result. And I just think it's so cute. It's so whimsical with like the real red polka dotted mushrooms. And then I like that it kind of tones it down with the French linen painted mushrooms. So what do you think? Now remember to leave me a comment today and tell me what was your favorite mushroom project. Okay, now in my vendor booth, I have a lot of people that buy just little signs to put on their desk or on their counter. And this is just a scrap piece of wood. And I painted with oh gracious, I can't get my words out, with Rust-Oleum Serenity Blue. And I put sealer on it. And this particular transfer is a Timeless Designs transfer called Hello Fall. And I just think it's really sweet. It's got a little chair and some flowers on it. And these just sell really well in my booth. And the wood was something that somebody gave me. And the transfer is really cheap. So I usually only sell them for about $5. And sometimes when people come to my vendor booth, they just want to buy something small. They don't always want to buy anything big. And then I'm just using Tim Holtz Distress ink to go around the edges, just to kind of put that extra layer on it. And isn't that just so sweet? Because when you think about fall, you just see that little buffalo check. And I like that it says crisp days of fall. Okay, now this is my last project. And this is one of those heavy cardboard pumpkins that I get at Dollar Tree. I guess y'all can probably tell I like these a lot. And this is actually a napkin, and it's got more of a beige or ecru background to it, and all it is script. And then I take the back 2 layers of the napkin and peel those off, and then I'm just putting it down with DI liquid patina. And once I push it down, then I use a little piece of saran wrap to get out all the wrinkles. But I'm still going really gentle on it. And then I've just got that little finger sander, and I go around the edges, and then I save that extra napkin because I can use it on a different project. Now, this particular little piece came out of a book, and I think I got it on Amazon, and it's called Vintage Ephemera Sampler. Because you're going to see how I put it onto the pumpkin after that. Now, over to the right is a little frame that I made with hot glue, and it is from Redesign with Prima, and it's called Lysandra. And it's really pretty, and it's real ornate up at the top. So I trim off that little piece of floral, and I'm just trimming it off to be able to fit it behind that frame because I'm going to add it to the pumpkin. And I just put it on top to trim it off, and then I just glue that on to the pumpkin. And then I use Tite Bond glue to put the frame on top of it. And I just really like it because I like having these little flat pumpkins because remember, once fall's over, you got to put all that stuff up, and round pumpkins are a little bit harder to store than these flat pumpkins. So I apologize if you think I've used them too much, but I really do like these things. And so I probably should not go and buy any more because if I make any more, I probably need to keep them myself. Now, once I got it all finished, then I just put some hot glue on with leaves and like a little bow and then like a little paper flower. And it's just muted colors, neutral colors, and it's something that could go in any decor. So what do you think? So here's all of our projects today all together. Got a lot of mushrooms in it, got some different pumpkins in it, but it just kind of all screams fall. So make sure to leave me a comment. Tell me what your favorite project is today. And tell me something. Are you somebody that will use mushrooms in your decor? So as we come to a close today, I want to thank you so much for all of your support and your sweet comments. I know a lot of you always comment on my videos, and it's so sweet to see your name pop up. And so thank you so much for your support of this channel. And make sure to give it a thumbs up, and I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel and become part of our family. And I plan on seeing you Thursday, and I can't wait for you to see what I've got ready for that day.